A new front is being prepared for a potential confrontation between the West and Russia. While Russia remains focused on Ukraine, the United States is seeking to expand its influence in the Caucasus region. The primary focus lies on Pashinyan, who is moving closer to the West as his only option for maintaining power. Pashinyan came to power through a democratic revolution. I remember how even Azerbaijani individuals told me that even Armenia had achieved democracy. However, after years of Pashinyan's rule, it is evident that there is no distinction between Pashinyan and Zelensky. Both leaders emerged with promises of democracy, but both are now dictators who are trying to stay in power. Pashinyan faced obstacles in his path towards the West. These obstacles included an old elite, a war with Azerbaijan, and the presence of Russian military forces. The old elite in Armenia had been focused on the Karabakh issue with Azerbaijan, a conflict that had been ongoing for decades. This war was a political tool used by Armenian old elites in their domestic policy. Once Pashinyan took office, one of the first things he did was to gradually ban Russian channels in the country, just like Zelensky. He slowly pushed the Russian language out of television, following the same path as Zelensky. With the ongoing war with Azerbaijan, Pashinyan attempted to create a trap for Russia. Despite Karabakh being under Armenian influence, Armenia had never recognized it as an independent country or its own territory. This meant that if Azerbaijan attacked the Karabakh, it would not attack the territory of Armenia, because Armenia does not recognize it as its own territory. When Azerbaijan launched a war to liberate those territories from occupation, they considered Karabakh as their own territory. Pashinyan did nothing to stop this conflict. We could see how Armenian Karabakh was gradually losing territories while waiting for help from Pashinyan. But help never came. Who was to blame for this? Of course, Russia. Apparently, Russia was supposed to start a war with Azerbaijan because Azerbaijan attacked Armenian territory, which Armenia does not recognize it as its own. Do you see the trick here? After suffering a humiliating defeat, Pashinyan immediately began blaming Russia and the Collective Security Treaty Organization, ODKB. After the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, Pashinyan speeded up his actions. Now as Ukraine is losing on the front, the West is seeking to initiate a new war under Russia's nose. This would disperse Russian forces. Pashinyan has no other choice but to turn to the West, otherwise he will lose power and more. Pashinyan is another Zelensky figure who needs war as a tool to stay in power. He has requested the withdrawal of some temporary operation groups of Russian border guards. On the other hand, he already invited an EU group which consists of NATO soldiers to Armenia. In the near future, Pashinyan will ask for the withdrawal of other parts of Russian military forces and his country's exit from the ODKB. Finally, he will ask for NATO's presence. The scenario is repeating itself. NATO moves closer to Russian border, Russia responds, the West cries about a dictatorial Russia, and many people suffer. Pashinyan is yet another example for everyone in the region and the world that the West does not care about them or their nation. I'm happy that the war in Karabakh is over, but the fact remains that Pashinyan intentionally lost a war that his nation had been fighting for decades. Thousands of people lost their lives in those tragic wars. One man came with promises about democracy and now destroying everything only to stay in power. This is a valuable lesson for everyone. Don't sell your independence to anyone. Another country that has caught the attention of the West is Georgia. If you're not familiar with the geography of the Caucasus region, Armenia lies between Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Iran. This means that if war breaks out between Russia and Armenia, the Russians will have to enter Armenia through Georgia or Azerbaijan. The most direct path will be through Georgia. The Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze understands this as well. He is often called a pro-Russian or anti-European leader due to his statements on this issue. He says that the West is pushing for a second front against Russia in the ongoing war in Ukraine. Many pro-Western Georgian politicians during the war in Ukraine advocated for attacking Russia now, as Russia is focused on Ukraine. However, he went against these statements. Meanwhile, Georgia has approved a law on foreign agents, based on similar laws in the USA and Europe. The West is furious, not because they want to be the only ones with such laws in the world. They are upset because it means that Western organizations will face obstacles in financing local parties and organizations. Pro-Western people are saying this is a Russian law, even though, as I said it now and in my previous videos, the USA and Europe have exactly the same laws. Moreover, even more strict than Georgian. Plus, if you think about this law, not only pro-Western organizations will face obstacles, but Russians too. According to the bill, non-governmental organizations and media outlets that receive foreign funding of more than 20% of their annual income will be required to register as organizations promoting the interests of foreign power. They will have to fill out an annual financial declaration, and anyone who tries to evade registration as a conductor or fails to submit a declaration will face a fine of 25,000 lari, about $9,500. That's it. Again, the West has exactly the same laws, even more strict. This law can spark a revolution attempt from the Western side, another Ukrainian Maidan. US Deputy Secretary of State Jim O'Brien traveled to Georgia with a ready-made package of sanctions against oligarch Ivanishvili, the founder of the current ruling party in Georgia. This is the latest ultimatum from the USA. I have always shown in my videos and will continue to show the Western lies and hypocrisy. The deputy head of the US State Department's press service said, "We have made it clear that the adoption by the Georgian parliament of the law on foreign agents not only does not correspond to the values of the United States, but also does not correspond to the aspiration of Georgian people. The government of Georgia needs to change the course." These questions arise. Why should Georgia or any other country conform to other people's values? And don't the values of the United States include non-interference in the internal affairs of other states? What happened to every country has the right to choose its path? The Caucasus has become another chessboard between Russia and the West, and I hope it will not bring destruction and death. Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine is not the only place where the West will face military resistance to its expansions towards other independent countries' borders. If the West does not stop expanding, more wars will occur.